Welcome to the Sage Advice Podcast, transforming the way people think and work so their organizations can thrive. Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Ed Kless, and with me today is Barry Leahey. Barry is the CEO of Playdale, the UK's leading manufacturer of children's playground equipment with distributors in 50 countries. Playdale won the National Manufacturing and Export Award in 2017. In 2018, Barry was named IOD Global Director of the Year and the Cumbria Business Person of the Year to both the Telegraph's Top 50 Most Ambitious Business Leaders and the Manufacturer Top 100 People in Manufacturing lists. He is currently the chair of the Institute of Directors in Cumbria and is an honorary professor at Lancaster University Management School. Welcome to the Sage Advice Podcast, Barry Leahey.
It's a pleasure to be here, Ed. Thanks for having me.
Well, first off, Barry, why do you do what you do?
Great question, and I'm sure I ponder this when I'm traveling usually, and we've not traveled so much recently. But I think it's my makeup. I'm a self-confessed workaholic, but I believe I became a workaholic because I always wanted to win from a very, very, very young age. I may even speak about it later, sporting heroes, but I realized that to be the best, you have to think and act and research and train and just constantly evolve to stay ahead of the pack. So I'm very driven, and I guess that's what makes me do what I do. But also, I'd say in the latter part of my career, especially the last 10 years, I've enjoyed giving back. I get a real buzz out of developing people and processes and businesses, but more developing people and seeing them maximize their abilities. So I think it's this drive and then this joy of seeing people achieve.
And share with me some of your thoughts about improving productivity in the face of the COVID-19 crisis we've been experiencing.
Ed, it's going to be vital. It's going to be more vital than ever. You know, especially here in the UK, we're behind on the productivity global scales, and we've been working on that. You know, at my company now at Playdale for the last 5 years or so, we've been really searching for those small incremental gains. You know, we've created a culture that looks outwardly. I want people to be aware what the world is doing, not just in our industry, but other industries, because one of my mantras is if we are not changing faster than the outside world, we're already going backwards. People think change is okay and you're going to be moving forward. But if you're moving forward slower than the outside world that's also moving forward, we're already going backwards. So it's huge. Obviously, COVID has hit the majority of businesses across the globe. Some will bounce back quickly. Some will take a prolonged period of time. But during that period of time, businesses will be looking to build back better, not just build back. And it's going to be those tiny little things that if you add them all together, could see you go from fourth or fifth place in a market to second and then first. And digitization for me is key to all of that. So to put it in perspective, at my business, it's a manufacturing business, and we have been on a digital journey over the last 5 to 6 years, I would say. And what we call, lots of organizations we've partnered with have come into the business and said, let's do a digital walkthrough. Well, in the last 6 months, those digital walkthroughs have been changed into digital sprints. And we've been very progressive, I believe, and we've invested in technology. So yes, we've protected the business, we've looked at cash, and we've looked at all the correct things to do around governance of a business, but at the same time, we've made sure we're investing. And the reasons why: we want to improve productivity when markets pick up, so we can not only stay with the pack, but then get ahead of the pack because we've invested in the right things.
And really, it sounds what you're describing is almost like the law of compounded interest applied to productivity, right? This notion that if you improve 1% every day, you're in 70 days, you're twice as good. So it's really just the leveraging of that consistent incremental change that makes a big difference for you.
It is. It's being uncomfortable with the status quo. It's vital that we just stay ahead of status quo. It is not to happen in the business because I'm lucky. You mentioned at the beginning we're trading in 50 countries. I think I've been in over 60 countries around the world. And, I think in the West we can be quite arrogant about how developed we are. We call other nations developing nations. Well, they're missing out the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and some nations are moving straight to 2030, and we've got to keep up with that, and if we're going to be global powerhouses in business, we've got to stay cutting edge. And it is this, 1% every day, making every single day count.
Yeah, it's interesting because, as you mentioned, some areas, for example, I know in the sub-Saharan Africa, for example, they never had phone lines, but they just went right to cell phones. So, guess what you're describing here is similar things are happening from a manufacturing standpoint. In that these developing countries are really going to the latest and greatest technology in their places, and the rest of the West has to really be prepared for that.
Correct. Yeah, and you can numerous examples, but the cell phone one is great. But yeah, there's places in Asia. They've sent all their students to the US and the UK for the last 25 years to the best universities. They're going back and implementing all the great things, but they've not got the infrastructure. They've got to change. Where to improve productivity means improving roads and infrastructure. Well, if you don't have all the historical infrastructure to change if it's the first time you put it in. And then you talk about broadband and Wi-Fi and things like that, and it makes a difference. Those percentages matter, and if people are more productive, they can be more competitive on price. You're more competitive on price, then all of a sudden, the customers decide, oh, I won't go to that country, I'll go to this country. So, as a global business, it's massive that we just keep finding those small gains, and the business is divided up in a way that we do that. We have goals in different parts of the business, and from those goals are action plans, and those action plans are just small things that no one would think made a difference. But when you add it up, we've doubled our profitability in the last 5 years.
And Barry, we have an exit question that we ask all of our guests, and that is, who is a hero of yours and why are they a hero?
I've got several, but I'll link it back to what I said at the beginning. One of my heroes was an athlete called Sebastian Coe. Now, if you ever read his book or his father's book, Sebastian Coe was the world record holder for the 800 meters. I believe he broke the world record in June 1981, 141.73, and it stood for about 30 years. Now, he found those incremental gains way back in the 80s. Before people started talking about incremental gains, and it was all in his training, and he trained to beat the competition. He trained to find those small margins, be it around nutrition or training techniques, and he scoured the world to find them. And I guess I took that competitive edge into business.
And Barry, tell us how we can get a hold of you.
I'm available on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'm at Barry Leahey, and Leahey for everyone is Leahey. And yeah, LinkedIn, I'm there as well as Barry Leahey. There's not many of us around, so you should easily be able to find me.
All right, Barry Leahey, CEO of Playdale. Thanks so much for being a guest on the Sage Advice Podcast.
Thank you, Ed.
For more Sage Advice, visit and subscribe at sageadvicepodcast.com.